Hello, Jared. Welcome to All Ears English. How are you today?
Hey, Lindsay, I'm doing great.
Great. I'm excited to have you on and to talk about travel, which is a topic I'm super passionate about. I know our listeners are, and we're going to get some good stuff today in today's episode. So, first, I'd like to introduce you to our audience. Guys, on the show today, we have Jared Kamrowski. He is the founder of Thrifty Traveler, the leading source for flight deals, cheap travel tips, and maximizing credit card travel rewards. Ooh, I'm so excited. Jared honed his travel skills by traveling over 100 nights a year in banking. He left his corporate job in 2017 and now runs Thrifty Traveler full time with a team of 20. You can catch him and his team flying the fanciest first class cabins, as well as budget airlines paying pennies on the dollar. He resides with his wife and son in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So it sounds like you used to be in banking. Is that right, Jared?
Yeah, not the most exciting job in the world, but it allowed me to travel, and I just kind of got the bug there. And
Yeah.
my wife wanted to travel, and I had a bunch of student loan debt, and I had to figure out
Oh
how
my
to travel
gosh.
on the cheap. So that's kind of the genesis, Thrifty Traveler. And then
Yeah.
people wanted to know, how do you and your wife travel so much? So
Right.
then I
Right.
made the website,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just exploded from there.
Okay. I love it. Was there one kind of moment when you said, hey, I'm done with this banking thing? I know travel is important to me. Was there a moment on a flight or in an airline lounge or I don't know, when you walked out into a city where you said, this is what I want to dedicate my life to?
Yeah, it was more even like this might sound nerdy and really boring, but like planning trips
Yeah.
was so fun. And I was like, every time I'd plan a trip and then we'd go, I'd be like, oh, that was so enjoyable. I got so much out of it. How can we do this more? And then I kind of just worked backwards, like
Mm,
how can we replace our income, etc., which of course is a long story, but I was
yeah.
like, I just need to do the thing that gives me so much back,
Oh,
and do it more.
I love that. I think our listeners are all going to connect with that because we're a community of global professionals, right? Working on our English language skills, but really we want to be global citizens. Though I just came back from Egypt and the way you feel when you come back from an international trip is just, it's something so special. Like your mind's been open to the world. It's incredible. So I'm on board with your mission, Jared.
Yeah, that new perspective from traveling, that's what it's all about.
Oh, it's so good. So we know the why now. I think we all share this why that travel holds a very special place in our hearts, but we want the how. So we're hoping today that, Jared, we can have you on the show to talk about three ways that we can travel, as we say in English, kind of on the cheap. Like, what are your travel secrets, right? I've heard about people that do this kind of thing with credit cards out there and they're always traveling. Like you said, your friends noticed that you and your wife are always doing this, but I never quite understood why, or not why, but how. How do they do it? So let's get into your secrets if you're willing to share. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, what would be the first tip that all of our listeners could take advantage of?
Yeah, no matter where you live in the world, when you're booking flights, the one tool you should be using is Google Flights.
Interesting.
That's like the best one is no matter where you live, wherever you're flying, almost always Google Flights is going to be the best tool. Obviously it's free to use. It allows you to search very quickly through like 11 months of the calendar, and
Okay.
then you can book directly through the airline, and obviously airlines all over the world, which just makes it super easy.
Okay. And is that because Google is the largest search engine? They scan everything on the web, or why is it Google? Why not? I usually go to Expedia. I do Google Flights, but sometimes they'll go to Expedia or Orbitz. Why Google Flights?
Yeah, Google Flights, just because they're aggregating all that data, and probably the biggest difference from like a third party online travel agency like Expedia or Orbitz is you're directly booking through the airline, which
Okay.
especially post pandemic, your life is going to be so much easier that if you have any kind of an issue with your
Mm,
flight or changes, you don't have to work through a third party. You can work directly with the airline, pick up the phone, not involve
uh,
anybody else. And there's very rarely a difference in pricing between directly with the airline and Orbitz. So there's not a whole lot of savings. So we always say
okay.
book direct.
Yeah.
That's the ticket.
I wonder if that's changed over the years since, we were all traveling in the early 2000s. I feel like Orbitz used to be cheaper and then it was more expensive to go direct, but now maybe they've evened it out. I don't know. Maybe that's just my perception. It's not true.
No, for sure. It's more of a level playing field right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, Google Flights is definitely, I mean, it's how we use, we're we're all about finding flight deals at Thrifty Traveler, and we
Yeah.
use that tool ourselves amongst many other tools. But it's just a
Okay.
surefire thing. It's easy and it
I do have to
works.
ask you, what are your thoughts on Hopper? Because I use the Hopper app a lot to scan, because they send you alerts and like, oh, book now, or I don't know any other tool where it will tell me, book now, the price is not going to go down, or wait to book. Do you like, what are your thoughts on that app, Hopper?
Yeah, no, and Hopper's great. Again, you're kind of like working through a third party, but it
Mm-hmm.
is great to find, when you should be booking because it's always like,
Right.
how are you supposed to know
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're getting a good deal?
We
It's
don't know.
impossible unless
Yeah.
you're like some kind of an expert.
Right.
So I think Hopper's great. Google has some similar tools. The problem with Google Flights is they don't have an app that makes it super easy.
Mm,
If you have a Gmail account, you can sign up for price alerts. And
okay.
it'll also, when you're booking, you can look at the bottom of Google Flights before you book. It'll tell you, is this flight cheap or expensive in a historical perspective. So
Okay.
Google
Okay.
Flights has the same features, but
Yeah.
it's maybe not as fancy and beautiful as Hopper is.
So it sounds like the point here, though, is just scan as wide as you can at first, right? Don't limit yourself to specific sites. Just go wide and then narrow it down from there. I love it. Okay.
Exactly.
So Google Flights is a good place. Okay. What would be your second tip? What can our listeners do no matter where they live in the world, no matter where they want to go? How can they travel on the cheap? What are the secrets? What's number two?
Yeah, so we have a concept called the flight first rule here at Thrifty
Yeah.
Traveler,
What is
and it's
that?
all about rethinking the way you travel. So we want, obviously booking a flight a lot of times can be one of the most expensive parts of your trip.
Yeah.
So finding a cheap flight and letting it guide you to maybe a different destination or a
Oh,
different maybe you're traveling maybe a week different, really letting the cheap flight be your guide instead of the biggest mistake you can make as a traveler is saying I want to travel from August 1st through the 7th and I'm going to Copenhagen and
yeah.
this is happening and now I need to find a flight because once you kind of put yourself into a position where
Yeah.
you're not flexible because flexibility is key,
Mm-hmm.
you got to try to remain flexible. So booking your flight first and letting it guide you to where you're going to go, that's the absolute best way to save on your next trip.
And how far in advance do you typically book your flights? Like if you're booking personally, what is the recommendation? How far will you go? How close to the date will you go?
Yeah, I
Most
would
dangerous.
definitely not recommend booking within, 30 or 45 days because flights can get more expensive. The airlines
Yeah.
know that. So last minute bookings for the most part, no longer exist. So, the best I would say probably, you know, 3 to 6 months out is when I think my wife and I
Mm.
book most of our travel. And of course, what we recommend at Thrifty Traveler.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ticket. What we always do, especially like if a flight's way out, start and you're like, oh, I want to go to Rome or I want to go to,
Yeah.
Cairo, similar to your recent trip. You
Yeah.
know, I would set up a Google Flights price alert if you have a
Okay.
Gmail account and then just watch flight prices. And when you see it drop big time, then book the ticket.
I like that. So we kind of have to be always alert, aware, checking those prices, doing a little active legwork ahead of time instead of just showing up saying, "Oh, that's what it costs. I'm just going to book it because I'm going to go." Interesting, interesting. I do feel like flight prices pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, I see a real difference. Do you see a real difference before the pandemic and
Oh,
after?
yes.
Significant, right?
The playbook of how airlines price different parts of the globe and just all these different things, it's been thrown out the window. And there's definitely
Yeah,
it's different for
yeah.
sure.
But we have to stay
Especially
dedicated. Sorry, go ahead, Jared. What
no,
were
no,
you
no,
going to
go
say?
ahead.
No, I was
I was
going
gonna
to say.
say, especially
Okay.
domestic, like US pricing. I know we have people from all
Yes.
over the world, but like flight pricing has just changed. It's gotten so much more expensive in other areas and cheaper in others. You just need to know kind of where to look, and that's what we're all about.
Well, that's why I like your flight first mentality, because then it becomes a little bit more of an adventure, right? Like I thought I wanted to go to Japan, but I realized I could go to Cambodia and it's a lot cheaper and I could create an adventure there. And not a lot of people have been to Cambodia from the US, right? It could be amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly true. And as long as you have that open mind and flexibility, that is how you save. And it's really, I know it sounds really simple, but it is that simple.
I love it. Okay, so the flight first mentality, create your own adventure and then save on the flights. And then you have a little bit more money to spend during your adventure. I love it. What would be the third thing we need to know to travel like an expert?
Yeah. So, we're still focusing on flights here with this next one as well. And it's like, what days are the cheapest to actually fly? Like your
Okay.
butt's in those seats, not when to book,
Yes.
but when you're gonna be flying. So flight pricing is all about supply and demand. So the days that have the most demand, a lot of times are, Sunday and Monday when business travelers are traveling, and then also Friday and then Sunday when, people obviously are going to be traveling. So you want to avoid those days. So
Okay.
look at Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday departures and returns. Just give it a test on
Right.
your next flight. And I think you might be surprised to see that those days, you can maybe save, 20 to 40% on your next flight. Just being
Oh,
flexible. This all goes back to that flexibility that we touched on earlier.
yeah, flexibility is huge. Yeah, so if we can be a little flexible, what are your thoughts on red eyes? Is that a hard line for you? Do you do
Ooh,
red eyes
no,
or
no,
no?
no. I'm starting to get closer to 40 years old. So when I was in my 20s, absolutely. Like I would do any of those things, but now that
Yeah,
stuff is getting
no.
more and more painful for me. I'll be
It's tough.
honest.
It's tough. Believe it or not, I still do them and I'm in that age range as well. I still do it when I fly back because I'm from the East Coast, but I live in Denver. So I go back a lot to the East Coast and I pay for it every time. I pay
But you
for it
can
every time.
save big, and
I save and
I
I
mean, you
pay,
know
right?
that.
Exactly. You save
Yes,
big. You do.
yes.
And then when it comes to booking, just a little piece of curiosity. I bet our listeners are curious about this too. So you mentioned midweek is a good time to fly, but is there something around when you book? I had heard, maybe this is a rumor, that if you book like, I think it's Saturdays, the day you make the booking, not when you travel, is the flights will show up as more expensive. Is that true or is that just a rumor?
That's, generally, yeah, it's a rumor. It used to be like Tuesdays was like when flight inventory was put out. Like we're
Okay.
talking like 10, 20 years ago.
Okay.
And that's when you saw like flight prices were like cheaper on Tuesdays, booking on Tuesdays.
Okay.
But that's just not
Not
true
true.
anymore. And, we're constantly looking at tens of thousands of different flights every single day at Thrifty Traveler. And
Got
we
it.
see flight deals every single day. So that's why like going back to Google Flights, setting up those flight price alerts and
Yeah.
just having some automation out there to send an email into your inbox. And then when
Yeah.
flights prices drop, then just book and not being focused on, which day of
Okay.
the week you're actually booking.
Yeah. So it sounds
It's a
like the
great
playbook.
question.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the playbook has changed a little bit. We need to update our playbook for booking travel, but the world is still out there and waiting for us, right? I mean, that feeling we get that we talked about at the beginning is still going to be there after a pandemic event, right? We're out in the world, we can explore the world, the world's waiting for us. So I want to encourage our listeners, guys, to, update your own playbook in terms of how you book, be a little more strategic, a little smarter, know that what worked in 2010 doesn't work in 2023, and go with the new rules. This is awesome, Jared. Where can our listeners find your website, what you guys do, and learn more? Maybe you have a blog or something over there.
Yeah, go to thriftytraveler.com. Simple as that. And yeah, our big thing is Thrifty Traveler Premium, which is our flight deal alert service.
Cool.
Um, so check that out as well.
All right, great. Thanks for coming on the show and letting us know about the new way to book in 2023. I'm just excited for my next trip. I love travel.
Me too. Thanks for having me,
Thanks
Lindsay.
again, Jared. Take care. Bye.